Let love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to see a revolution somehow. Let love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to see a revolution somehow. And now I'm lost in your freedom. In this world I'll
I'm Melissa, and we're gonna help you circle back to God.
Today we are going to touch on a subject that can be hard to hear. Please stay tuned. The subject is domestic violence. A lot of people face it. A lot of people are going through it. We have sources for you to get help, to help a neighbor, to help a friend. First, I'm going to pray, and then we'll kick it off with Melissa. Lord, I ask that you keep everyone safe during COVID. Protect the ones that are going through hardship, the ones that have lost their job because of COVID. I ask that you watch out for the criminals and the victims of all these mass shootings, Lord. I guess there has been 45. That is too much. Too much, Lord. Protect them. Wrap your arms around them, Lord. I also ask that you get our words out there to people that need to hear it, and spread the word. Spread your word. That's what we want, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Melissa, kick us off.
Woo! Domestic violence is a modern context meaning violence in the home. Woo!
And did you know that before it became a term to use for partners or anything like that, it was actually a term used for in the nation? If there was violence in the nation, it was domestic violence.
Really? I did not know that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Well, awesome stuff you learn when you research. I love it. Research is great for the brain. Gotta do it. Okay. In ancient times, if an unmarried virgin daughter who was raped by a man was not already married, was forced to marry her rapist. Okay, let me say that again. If a woman on the street that was a virgin and was raped by a person that was not married himself, okay, raped her. If they were, the only penalty for this rapist was to marry her and pay a fine to the father. And I actually have a verse here in the Bible that actually coincides with this. It's Deuteronomy 22, 28 through 29. And it states, if a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shillings. I don't know how much that is in today's money. I don't know, of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. What do you think of that?
That would be awful. Could you imagine?
I could not imagine being with somebody that violates me in that way and having to see him every single morning.
That would suck.
That would really suck. And viewers out there, let me know what you think about this too. It's right here in the Bible, okay? This is the living word, okay? So it's not just something I pulled out of the internet. When I seen this and I knew I studied this year, I was like, I have to pull it up and show people. So.
And the first name that came to mind was Jacob's daughter, Dinah.
Yep, that's in Genesis.
Yes, it is.
I don't remember the chapter, even though I looked it up today. Can you believe that? It's in the 20s. Genesis 20-something. Yes, so it's there if you guys want to look that up, too.
Historically, the only human rights women were granted related to their value was a man's property. Children had no rights at all.
Yep. And could you imagine that, too?
I know.
Being a property, not a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like that stove behind us is property, you know. It could be treated really poorly or treated very well.
Right.
I'm very, optimistic, and I would really hope somebody would, treat that object well. But, the reason we're doing this is because it's not happening.
Exactly.
So, during the Roman Empire, a woman could divorce her husband if the abuse was excessive, only if she was part of the upper class. Meaning, if she was lower class, she couldn't divorce her husband no matter how excessive the abuse might be. I mean, could you imagine just coming home from the market and, your husband gets mad because you got apples instead of oranges? Mm-hmm. Being afraid that you got the wrong thing?
Yeah.
If any of you are facing anything like this, we have a hotline we have up here for you.
Yes.
Call it. Don't be afraid to reach out to anybody, and we'll even pray for you if you want to reach out and just say, yeah, my husband's, or my wife, because it does not pertain just to women.
That's correct.
And have a card.
Any card, long as it's a card. Right after the America's independence, women were to take seriously the biblical commands to obey the submit to men. This basically told women to change her behavior rather than to escape.
Yeah, and
woohoo!
Your cards just want to go right up there.
Yeah, they do.
Basically, it does say in the Bible, and we have the verse for this one too. It says submit to your husbands, but it does not mean in that manner.
No, they took it literally out of content.
Yeah, they did. It basically means be at your husband's, side. Be with him. Don't be with another male. Stuff like that. Any other thoughts on that? Like, what do you think about that with taking the Bible so
seriously?
Yeah, well, you got to take it seriously.
Well,
but
yeah.
you have to understand it to know, stuff like that. You can't. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they read the whole passage.
No, they probably did not.
Yeah, they just seen that little bit and said, okay, that's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to do that passage right now, the one where it says submit?
Yeah, let's see what it says. Where's
that
it at?
one, I'll pull it up for you because it's right here. I'm going to have Melissa read this passage right here. It's from Ephesians 5:21 to 33.
Okay. And let's see if my eyes can actually...
It should have started right where it says instructions.
Yep. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husbands is the head of the wives, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also the wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Is that everything?
Is that to 33?
Oh. Whew.
That's okay. Like we said before, we're only human.
Okay. To make her holy and cleansing her by washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or anything other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Not, after all, no one ever hates their own body, but they feed and care for their bodies just as Christ does the church. For we all are members of his body. For this reason, a man would leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ in the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he himself, and a wife must respect her husband.
Now, for that, I don't believe they read the whole passage, because it basically says in there, too, that a man should love his wife like he loves his own body.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever known a man... Well, I know there's some people out there that like to,
mm-hmm.
beat themselves up, but not... I don't know a man that would beat himself up. Why would he do that?
Right, exactly.
So I don't think they read this whole passage when they said submit to your husbands. And it says submit to your own husbands like Christ submit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it should be. I don't, I submit to my husband loves me, we are a great partnership, and that's what it should be. It should be a partnership. Not one person is greater than the other. Right?
Right.
We
should, acknowledge his leadership.
Yes, exactly. In modern times, couples have gotten better at communicating and doing stuff like that, but there is still problems today.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Definitely. The courts between 1824 and 1874 said it is okay for a husband to abuse his wife to keep her in line, but do not do permanent damage, meaning they can beat her, but don't break a leg and not be able to walk again, which I find absurd. I'm like,
most definitely.
They said the couple should work it out privately. And that's how it was thought back in the 80s, too. A lot of people didn't want to get involved in a relationship problem, family matters. Until, 1970 is when they started recognizing that it was a problem and stuff like that. My mom and dad got divorced, but she could not get divorced while she was pregnant with me. The courts would not allow her. So she had to give birth to me, go through the whole process. We like throwing cards at you guys just to get it off edge a little bit because it's such serious topics. And I want to tell you guys, too, this is a disclaimer. We don't do this to judge anybody.
Nope.
We don't do this to scare anybody. We do this to spread awareness and love. And if anybody does want to talk or need a prayer or is having problems because they got out of a horrible relationship, there is people out there that care about you. Just remember that. And if I could hug the whole world, I would.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm a hugger.
We're huggers. Let's hug.
Woo!
Hug it out.
Hug it out.
Oh, there we go. See? We want to love on everybody, so just remember, if you need prayer requests, we're there. We have an email address. We have a Facebook page. You can comment on here. There's ways to get a hold of us. Now, of course, we're not giving out our address or phone number, because there are some people out there that could be a little, so.
Most definitely.
Most definitely. Go ahead, love.
In more modern times, politicians make family values a part of their platform. This includes strong marriages, marriage before sex, counseling, and other social services to hold the family together, and media images of families sitting down to dinner together.
Now, this one, I think, because when I was doing research, I'm thinking, not too many images are with family eating together anymore.
No.
This is more back in the 60s. That's when they say modern times and stuff like that. I do wish they brought that back, where family is portrayed to be together rather than divorced.
Yep.
Now, one of our topics we're going to be doing later on is on the Transgender Movement, as a Christian point of view, not to judge anybody.
Nope.
But there should be a man and a wife with children sitting at a table rather than watching whatever. I mean, yes, there is some nights where we sit in the living room and watch a movie while we're eating dinner. Okay? But we don't do it all the time. So, but I think there should be more images of family values out there rather than, violent stuff.
Exactly.
So the kids can grow up and see how a family, acts with one another. So, domestic violence became illegal by 1920. However, only since the 1970s has the criminal justice system begun to treat domestic violence as a serious crime and not just a private family matter. So, like I said, this has been since biblical times where it has been awful. And now they're just realizing, I mean, this is just the United States that I'm thinking of where the justice system's working on domestic violence. There's other countries out there the wives are still property, and I pray for those poor women because they don't know any better. Us women in the 21st century, we know better, you know, and it is hard to get out of a relationship, okay? I have some myths to go over about domestic violence. I have 23 things about men and abuse, okay? But it's not easy leaving an abusive relationship, just so you know. And if somebody wants to talk to you about domestic violence, don't judge them. Don't say, well, you went back to him. Be an open ear. Give them suggestions on how to leave. Don't judge them about it, you know. So I have an email about myths for domestic violence, and I'm going to go over that one first. The 8 common myths are, let me pull it up. Let's see. Myth number 1 is domestic violence is only physical. While physical violence is certainly damaging and extremely painful, that isn't the only form of it. Emotional abuse can be just as devastating and with long-term effects. Words are a powerful thing and should never be tossed around casually. And I will admit that when I was growing up, my mom got with my stepdad when I was 11 years old, and they divorced when I was in my early 20s, I believe. It could have been my early 30s. But they fought a lot. And so I grew up with domestic violence in my house. And words can really do damage. When a victim only hears and receives negative reinforcement from a mom, dad, spouse, or person they should be able to trust, they start to buy into all those lies. Later on down the road, this can lead to depression, lack of social development, low self-esteem, avoidance of certain situations, or an unnatural and desperate desire to be accepted by others. Sexual abuse is equally as destructive. There you go. Thank you. I'm getting tongue-tied again. And can have similar lasting results. I'm going to have, we're going to take turns on this. Go ahead and read number 2, Melissa.
Domestic violence should stay behind closed doors. Extended family members and friends will oftentimes see evidence of domestic violence that is taking place in a home during a visit, and they do nothing. They have the misconception that it is a private family matter. I need a nap.
Yeah, we're both pretty tired.
And that it should stay behind closed doors. When a domestic violence situation is happening right in front of you, it should never be given a blind eye, especially if something more serious happens to the victim later down the road.
And I gotta tell you, if you guys didn't do anything, and then something more serious happens, guilt is an awful thing to face. Awful thing. So, that goes with child abuse too. It's if you see something happening that's more than just, smack on the butt or whatever. If you see somebody slapping a kid across the face, step in. Mm-hmm. Talk to the parent, ask them if they need help. Do something, because slap across the face in public means there's more serious things going on. Mm-hmm. So, myth number 3. Most times, domestic violence isn't that serious. Okay? No matter the degree of violence that is taking place behind closed doors, domestic violence should always be taken seriously. It's an illegal offense in the U.S. and is considered to be a serious crime that's punishable by law. Domestic violence, however tiny it may seem, if left unchallenged, will only worsen as time goes by. I definitely believe that. I believe that if it's not taken care of, the man's just going to get angrier, or the woman, like I said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The abuser will get angrier.
The abuser, exactly. And I don't mean to say women all the time. I am a woman, So
right.
It's a natural thing to say, woman. So
violence usually only happens to people of lower income.
Remember, these are myths.
Right. It is true that people that live within lower income communities or families that struggle with substance abuse are more likely to find themselves surrounded by some form of violence. That's because these tough situations can be extremely stressful. That's not to say that there aren't good people that can survive these conditions without expressing violence within their homes. Domestic violence does not just happen in these situations. However, people from the middle class and upper class deal with violence as well. They just do a better job of covering it up. In order to hide the embarrassment or ruining their public profiles, this is another reason why fewer people from these classes come forward.
Yep. Money talks to a lot of politicians, to a lot of people. It's sad in everywhere. If you have a parking ticket, if you have money, you can get out of it. Even if you were in the wrong or not, money talks. That saying.
It's sad, but it's true.
It is. It's true. Yeah. Myth number 6 is domestic violence is due to an anger management or impulse control problem. Sexual harassment myths. Okay. Don't believe this one for a second. While abusers may in fact have an anger problem, they deliberately choose who they lash out on. Could be a spouse, could be their kid. They deliberately choose it. It's even carefully thought out who they can victimize and who they can't. For instance, violent people won't typically punch or slap their boss, but they won't hesitate to use violent force on others, like their spouse or children. Sexual harassment myths need to be addressed too. They are also part of domestic violence. Myth number 7, Melissa.
A person can't break from the domestic violence cycle. There is, in fact, a dark circle that can take place based on how a child is treated while growing up and how they will respond in certain situations when raising their children. If a person was abused as a child, there is a greater chance that they will have violent tendencies towards their children as well. They might find themselves wrapped up in and living out the same poor choices of their parents. This doesn't necessarily have to be everyone's story, though. There are hundreds and thousands of victims that came from violent situations that decided to break the cycle and give their children something they didn't have. A person does not have to continue in the sins and shortcomings of their parents, and a parent can't necessarily be blamed for the behaviors of their violent adult children.
I 100% agree. Like I mentioned before, my stepdad was pretty violent. My husband and I hardly ever argue. When we do get into a little spat, I say something and I walk away. We never argue in front of the kids because I grew up with it. I know how it feels. And I don't want them to grow up being timid and scared of loud noises or people arguing in front of them. I do suffer a little bit of PTSD, but it's not to where I can't function. I deal with it on a daily basis. My anxiety is getting a lot better. My mom knows how I feel. So if you're watching this, Mom, love ya. We're very, very close. I am glad she finally got rid of my stepdad. It has made our lives a lot better. And he was like this to most of the women in his life. So, like this said, they choose their victims. He was never abusive to men. He never got into fights with men. It was always women. So, domestic violence is something that you have to talk about or it can't be fixed. It can't be shoved under the rug. It can't be behind closed doors. If you ever watch the show Cops, there's a lot of domestic victims on there. So, yeah. And the cops not even sure how to handle most of them, They usually, the ones I've seen mostly are the guys in cuffs where the man is like, she's the one who beat me up. So, myth number 8. It's easy for a victim to escape from an abusive relationship. This is what I was talking about before. From an outside perspective, it might seem easy for a victim in an abusive situation to get out or seek help, but fear has a crippling effect on the victim, keeping their mind chained to the situation and immobilizing them from any attempt or thought of escape. They're wrestling with the fear of the unknown, fear of not making it financially without their partner, fear of being discovered by the abuser after they've tried to escape, fear of so many things. And that's, I'm going to stop right there for a minute, and that is why we have shelters and places here in Saginaw. We have one specifically called the Underground Railroad, where people of domestic violence victims, they can go and get help. I have donated to them a few times because they do a good job. You know, they have houses for these women to find new homes and stuff. So they may not, they may have even been threatened by the abuser at one point or another if they ever tried to escape, that they and their children would be put in extreme danger. Once a victim decides to leave the relationship, their situation has become critical. If the abuser sees them leaving or discovers the victim's intentions. This just reminded me of a movie. It's called Enough with Jennifer Lopez. Have you seen that one? She is in an abusive relationship, and she's tried to leave many times, and he kept finding her out. So she finally, at the end, she finally took some classes and learned how to defend herself. Really, really good movie. I recommend it to anybody. That was the 8 myths of domestic violence. The next one I have is 23 important male victims domestic violence statistics. Give me one moment there, viewers. Yep. Good Mountain Dew right here.
Good stuff, Maynard.
Dry throat. Talking a lot. Okay. So, I'm going to read these off. 63% of males are opposed to 15% of females had a deadly weapon used against them. Only 15% of the domestic violence that is reported to law enforcement officials is against men. Oh, wow. And mind you, I did not read these ahead of time, so I wanted to keep a blind eye when I read these to react. And this is, wow, only 15%. The number of men who are estimated to be assaulted by an intimate partner. The number of men who are estimated to be assaulted by an intimate partner every year is 835,000. That's a lot.
Yes.
Oh, I pray for those people.
Me too. Because I know what it's like.
Yeah.
So the difference between assaulted and rape. Assaulted is like being molested.
Yeah, I think assaulted is either there can be sexual harassment, there can be molestation, there can even be I think rape is more like forcing, but you can also have penetration without that, and I think that would also be assaulted. I don't know the fine line on that. We might have to do.
I looked up assaulted, and it says molestation.
Okay, so that's it's like, I don't even know what to think about this number.
I know.
835,000 every year.
That is terrible. My heart just goes out to them because I know what it's like to have both done to me.
I think if I could suggest anything to anybody, I think people need these classes at a young age. I know to throw things at, and of course the parents would have to consent.
Right,
but
most definitely.
I know when my kids were little, we had good touch, bad touch talks. And Head Start, you know. And I think they should do it older because you don't remember a lot of things from Head Start. I think when they start growing up, they should have the good touch, bad touch, and, you know, stuff like that. So they know, you know. 1 out of every 14 men has been physically assaulted at least once by a current spouse, significant other, or person they have dated.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, women are not the only victims.
No, they are not.
And that's why I decided to pull these out too, just so you guys can see not everybody's,
that men do go through.
Yeah, men do go through this. And they have a harder time because they're a man. They should be able to say something, but they can't because of the judgment they get from people.
Exactly.
So, 23% of men have reported that they were physically or sexually assaulted by their male intimate partner. 7% of men reported a domestic violence incident by a wife or female cohabitant. 1 in every 7 men age 18 and older in the U.S. has been the victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in his lifetime.
Wow.
Okay. Here's a little bit more. 16% of adult men have said that they were raped by a current or former partner. 94% of the
perpetrators.
Thank you. I knew that word. I'm like, whoa. Okay. 94% of the perpetrators of sexual abuse against boys are men. Oh, that saddens me. That really does.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is one thing too. Because a man will assault a boy doesn't technically make him gay.
Mm-mm.
That's a myth. Okay. I don't know what his mindset is to do that. Maybe he thinks that a boy won't talk because it's more embarrassing.
Right.
But if you see any signs or anything have him, get help.
The signs are depression.
For younger kids.
It's depression.
And
not doing things, shying away. Let's see if I can remember.
There's another sign too. I know because we had a girl that used to hang out at my sister's house all the time. She would try to take her clothes off and sit on males' laps.
Mm-hmm. They wet the bed.
They wet the bed is another sign.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to act, and they think it's normal at a young age.
Yes.
So when they sit on males' laps and try to do things, she was molested by her grandfather. Found out later on. So watch out for wetting the bed at a certain age. Shying away from things, getting depressed.
Yes.
Having outbursts is another one. Just watch out for signs in your neighborhood and stuff like that. And I would suggest, I don't necessarily say call CPS right away because you don't know, and you don't want to ruin a family of a assumption. Try to find a different way to find out,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk to the child privately, But another thing too is don't do yes and no questions. You have to do leading questions. Like, how are you today? Is there a reason you're walking around without your shoes on? And don't and I can't think of other questions, but there is a line of them. If I can find them, I will post it up here for you guys. Let's see. The next one is 1 in every 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 16 if current trends continue. In the natural violence against women survey, 2/3 of the men surveyed in that study stated that they were physically assaulted as a child by at least one adult caregiver. That's why it always nerve-wracks me to have my kids, go to strangers' houses and stuff.
Right.
I have to get to know them first. I never put my kids in daycare. I think the farthest I've ever went is the daycare at church. But I'm there.
Right, right.
It's like I'm there, so if anything, So, and they've done background checks and stuff. But even daycares sometimes can be dangerous. You want to ask the right questions. You want to do your due diligence before you drop your kiddo off. Because you don't know.
Exactly.
There has been some daycares that will neglect your child, abuse your child, stuff like that. So... let's see, 1 out of 5 inmates in prison has experienced at least one incident of being pressured into or forced to have sex during their incarceration. that kind of reminds me of, what's that prison movie? Oh, it's not coming to my mind now. Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. That one, it's a good movie. That's another one I suggest watching. He was... Yeah, watch it. I won't give it away if you guys haven't seen it, so... And then men are more likely to be slapped, kicked, or have objects thrown at them during a domestic violence incident. And then this says, can this problem be stopped? Domestic violence by an intimate partner affects more than 12 million people every year. And I'm going to let Melissa continue. Start with men right there, the second one there.
Men experience psychological aggression from an intimate partner just as often as women do. Mm-hmm. Between 1994 and 2010, about 20% of victims of intimate partner violence were men. Up to 10% of men have experienced stalking by former partners within the last 12 months. The percentage of non-fatal violence against men that occurs every year by intimate partners, 3%. In the last year, 2,000. Yeah, you do that number, please. 2,440 men. Is that right?
No. Nope. In the year 2000, 440 men. Yeah, there's a comma in the space, so you're good.
In the year 2000, well, it says year 2000, and then it goes, woohoo!
And 440 men. Yep, you're good. She's good.
Yeah, okay. In the year 2000, 440 men were killed by their intimate partner. Since then, 4% of male murder victims come from domestic violence incidents. When an intimate partner... Who? Okay.
My phone acting up on you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let me see.
Has a personality all of its own. Thank you.
No problem.
When an intimate partner has access to firearms, the chances of having a domestic violent incident increases 5 times. Mm-hmm. Husbands account for 19% of all people who were killed by their spouse. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so... Oh, make sure there's no more on this. This is a lot of information. I'm posting this site right here that I have because it actually has really good imaging too. You see all this right here? It shows all that they can look at. So definitely check out our sources. We'll have them posted. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is.
We're going to have a hotline for anybody to call that needs help. Pray for the victims. Pray for the, abusers as well. Yes. In the Bible it says, instead of hating your enemy, it says to pray for the people that persecute you.
Yes.
And I think you should do that. I think you should pray for the lost souls out there, the people that are hurting, the people that are not knowing what they're doing. Some of these people might think it's okay because they were abused themselves.
Right, and it's something they learned.
Yeah, and I am a wholehearted believer that you can break the cycle. Like that said, you can break the cycle. I don't abuse my kids. My husband doesn't abuse me. I had a boyfriend once that slapped me across the face, and guess what? Got rid of him. I will not put up with it. Today in church, there was a couple of things said. I'm going to mention this, and then we're going to move on to our last verse of the day. Where was it? Which one did I want to read here? Okay, so the Spirit of Jesus inside us spreads kindness, not harshness. So people of Jesus, okay, you people out there listening, spread kindness, not harshness. If you have Jesus right here, you want to spread love like we spread love. Spread love, not hate. Right, Melissa?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say it one more time. We are not doing this to judge. We care about people. We know we're bringing up topics that mean a lot to us and that are very prevalent, even though you might not hear about them. Mm-hmm. In the news, you're not going to hear so much about, domestic violence, you're going to hear about all the mass shootings because the media wants you to hear about all this other stuff. It's their narrative. You know, but this needs to be talked about. It needs to be solved. There needs to be a way us human beings need to stick together and help one another. If a person has violent tendencies towards their spouse or loved one, they need help. Yes. There's a way to fix it. You just got to find the right way. Right?
Most definitely.
I should have went to school for being a counselor because I was almost there. Just like close. So
there's night school.
There's night school. Yeah. Okay. You come over and raise my 3 kids while I go back to school.
Okay. I can do that.
Cool. Melissa's gonna read our last. Do you have it pulled up right there? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Melissa.
1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
Perseveres.
Yes. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in the part we prophesize in part. But when completeness comes, it is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in the mirror. Then we shall see the face to face. Now I know in part that I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these 3 remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
And that is exactly what we've been saying these 3 weeks. We have been saying spread love, not hate, spread kindness, help a neighbor, help a friend, help a loved one. That's why we do the hands and feet videos. We want to help people. We want to see our love spread. So please share these videos to anybody that you think could use them. Anybody that has maybe shied away from the church a little bit. Share them to those people. Maybe we can get them back there, you know?
Exactly.
Our next video is also going to be on domestic violence, only because I forgot to mention it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that's why we're having 2 videos on this. Anything else that we forgot to mention? I think that, did you get anything from church today that you would like to mention to our viewers? Today was a very good sermon. It was very good. Message was all about kindness. And I'm like, this flows with what we're trying to do. It hit home, so.
And kindness and self-centeredness cannot coexist.
Nope. If you're self-centered, how can you spread kindness if you're only thinking about yourself? That's what I was teaching our kiddos today, too. I'm a teacher at the church, and we're basically, today was about helping others rather than yourself and how to stay clear of a fight, so.
And they also say that other people are not our enemies.
No.
You know, and
Satan is the enemy.
Exactly. And he wants us to think that others are enemies.
Yeah.
And the thing he attacks the most is our minds.
I think sometimes he attacks our heart.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Because there is times where your heart and your mind fight each other. Your brain wants one thing,
and your heart wants another. Yeah.
And it gets you in trouble.
Always.
It really does. But, yeah, please share. Our email address is circleback2god@yahoo.com. And you can check us out on Facebook at Circle Back to God. We have a Facebook page there with some inspirational quotes. We have pictures posted. We have our videos posted. And then you can also, share on this. Comment, please, please, please. Comment suggestions on what you want to see us talk about. Any other suggestions, we are open to anything. If you have a prayer request you don't mind sharing with the public, please post it in the comments and people will pray for you. Prayer is a powerful thing.
Yes.
If your prayer is not answered right away, it will be. Even if God says no, it is answered because he might have a different plan for you.
Exactly. He always has something better.
But I realize with prayer too, it makes me feel better.
Yes.
When I pray, when I'm really down and I pray, it makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best thing right there,
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think we should let our viewers go and they can get on with their day. We will see you on Wednesday for another lovely video. Bye!